Okay, so it's from John. It's asking about the masters. So why is it that to do a MSc in football and performance in Wales, you have to have the UEFA B license? Any ideas on that?
To do the masters.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a part of the masters at US. I'm assuming you're talking about University of South Wales. As a part of the masters, you do the A license.
Okay.
So it's a part of the course. So you need to be
Fair
to
enough.
go on to the A.
Yeah.
That's the reason. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So, question from Ricardo regarding having a clear idea of player attributes in the recruitment process rather. How do you deal with cases of players that don't fit the attributes required for a specific position but still have outstanding potential?
Yeah, it's a good question. So you're talking about players that maybe not, they don't look. There's not going to be many players that you get through international pathways that haven't got certain attributes that got them there in the first place.
Yeah.
So technical ability, would certainly be one. You're not going to play international football if you haven't got outstanding technical ability or very, very close to outstanding technical ability. So that's always going to be there. Game understanding, and then I suppose attitude, application, and an unbelievable, football mindset. You're not going to get there unless you've got those basics. So I'm talking specifically from an international perspective now. It could be slightly different in clubs, and I'll try and come onto that in a sec. I'll try and answer that in a sec. But when it comes to the international game, the players that come into us are generally pretty good, in those areas. Otherwise, they wouldn't get there. Now, the ones that go, then we've got to try and make sure that they play in the positions in the areas that their attributes, best serve them. Now, when they're 15, 16, 17, you may have a left side centre back who can always also play left back, or you may have a centre back that can also play in midfield, or you may have a midfield player can also play full back, or 10 that can also play 9, so you have options, I suppose, in terms of player attributes. But what we've got to try and do is, knowing the international game, try and fit them into some kind of shape that best brings out their attributes, So we can't pigeonhole them too much into a shape, which is why we try and stay flexible with that. I've got, my next group coming through the 05s. I've actually had this conversation with a recruitment guy, with our talent ID guy lead this week. We've got 3 centre backs we want. He's saying, how are you going to give these guys the game time? Because we're thinking about playing one up in the 04s.
Okay.
And putting them in there. And I said, look, I'll just play with 3 centre backs. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. We'll play with 3 centre backs. We'll work it out. If we've got 3 great centre backs, we'll work with them. So that's really important, that we have a kind of I suppose, we have to be quite adaptable with that. I'm not sure if I answer your question, because it's a bit different in the international environment than in a club environment. If it was in a club environment, it would be, I think it would be slightly different, where you can, we're a bit restricted because we can only have Welsh kids, and there aren't that many of them. Do you know what I mean? So if I was in a club, I would probably be going out and recruiting exactly what I was looking for. Yeah. So a left back would have to have these certain things, so they'd have to be able to attack. They'd have to be able to, join in the attack. They'd have to be good 1v1 defending. They'd have to be good in terms of the distribution forward. They'd have to be good at defending the back stick. There'd be 4 or 5 things that are just in left backs that have to be there. So I'd probably go out and recruit based on that. And you probably have certain parameters that they have to be outstanding at, and then maybe some things that that's nice to have,
Yeah.
So it's difficult. It's difficult, and I don't think it's a perfect science.
So to summarize, basically, from a club's perspective, you're able to be a bit more selective, and you have a wider pool. Whereas with the national team, although you're getting quality candidates already, because otherwise they wouldn't be at a national level, you don't have that massive selection.
Yeah, and as the players go through the pathway, there's drop off.
Yeah.
Right. So then you've got players playing in first teams all around the world, who are generally playing in those areas, playing, left backs are playing left back, centre halves playing centre half. So it becomes a lot easier. I think with international youth teams, we try and bring through the best players. So if we've got 5 excellent footballers, I don't care if they're all midfielders, they're all playing.
Okay.
We've got to get them in the pit. We've got to get them in the team, because we need to give them that. We need to give them exposure to international football as much as possible, and know what it feels like to go and wear the shirt and do the national anthem and be a part of that process. So It's about experiences for me. It's about building experiences. If they're good enough to get to that level, then it's about building experiences so that they can continue to learn from experience, you know?
Yeah. You might have answered it already, but so you said like when you have like 3 excellent centre backs, you kind of find a way to make them all play. And you gave an example with midfielders as well. Is it that the players dictate what kind of systems that you're going to play on given match days, or do you have?
Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Kids.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah. No, I was just
go on. Sorry, say that one again.
That's fine. I was just asking, do the players that you have at your disposal, do they dictate what shapes that you're going to play on match days, or is it more about that you've got your set plan already?
Yeah, no, because we have these players for a number of years, you know, so we're monitoring these kids as 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds at their clubs before they come into the 15s as a national team. And then again, we're still monitoring all the kids that don't make that first 20. You know, there may be another 20 kids out there in the clubs. So we're monitoring, continually monitoring, bring them into camps, watching them play. So over time then, by the time we get to under 17s, where it really matters, we've probably come down on a formation for that age group.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So it takes that's not game by game. That'll probably be then that we say, right, well, we got the player attributes in this age group. We've got good wide strikers. We've got number 10s. We've got whoever we've got. Then we work at a formation that's best attributed to those players, and that's changed. And then if they do well at that formation, then sometimes we'll tweak it another way and throw another formation into them. You know. So 1 second.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's more about knowing the players, monitoring them, understanding them over a number of years, so that then when they're 17s, we've worked out that's the best formation for that age group. And then if new players come in as it goes, then we may change it. You know, it just depends. We have to be flexible, but it's important that the principles don't change.
Yeah.
You know, those principles are very, very the same throughout everything we do. But it's, you know, again, it's difficult, but you know, we try and know the players as best we can.
Great. Okay. And those principles are, I think you said, from the first team down, right? They're the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
All the way down. Yeah.
Awesome.
You watch Wales play, you'll see narrow, compact, force into wide areas, defend properly, counter attack, secure, you know, all that kind of stuff. Secure the first pass, build up if you can. If you can't build up, go longer. You know, so you'll see a lot of very similar principles, and we use that all the way through the age groups. Yeah. Super.
Okay. Question: who would you say is the best prospect currently at under 16, 17 level?
I'm not giving any names out. Sorry, boys. I can't do that. I try not to speak about players on these things, you know, and if I do kind of slip out sometimes, then they usually edit it out of the recordings. So we've got good players. Don't get me wrong. Look, I just, it's not fair, you know. It's not fair because I've got to protect the integrity of the clubs, really.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, question from James. What would a typical camp look like for the under 14s to 15s compared to the senior setup?
Well, they look different all the time, you know. So if it's say the 14s are in the regional camps, right? So the 14s do 2-day camps with us. They only come in for 2 days. So we have, if you can imagine, the 14s will come in across the school holidays 6 times in a year. And then we'll have 2 days in the south, 2 days in the north. And then also during the year, we have kind of north v south games. So all the kids who are based north will come in for the 2 days in the north, and they'll come in October. The only time we ask them to come out to school is in December. So they come out in December for 2 days each. Then they come in February. Then they come in Easter. Then they come in May. Then they come in the school holidays. Do you know what I mean? So they're with us for 2 years, really, as regional players. And then they become the national squad. So those days are they work across 4 principles. So the morning of day one, maybe breaking lines. Afternoon of day one is usually final third. So lots of goal scoring. Creating opportunities to score, that kind of thing. So we, you know, obviously from a motivation level, that's important. Morning of day 2 will be another principle, could be create and exploit overload, switch and play. And then the last session of day 2 would be the biggest game we can have. So if it could go to 11v11, and then we work on the principles through 11v11. And it's also a bit of ID and talent ID monitoring, how they're doing, you know. Then, you know, under 15, 16s camps can be anything from a 4-day training camp with an internal game at the end to a game camp where we play Switzerland twice, or Switzerland and Belgium, or Slovakia twice, or the Victory Shield. So then it's very different, you know. If we do a 4-day training camp, then it'll be very much principle based, socially driven, social psych driven. Lots of, but you know, alluding to tactical principles, you know, so general and specific work. And then, you know, a game at the end, and if it's a game camp, it'll be all tactical. This is the shape, because, you know, you're playing the next day, you need to leave it in your legs as much as you can. So we'll have probably a 2-day prep, in possession to transition, out of possession to transition, and finishing. Do you mean always finishing in every session we do? Goal scoring, and then you're building into a game, and then usually there's a 2-day window between games, so you'll recover day, you know, match day +2 +1, and then you'll reflect, and then you'll train match day +2 to play again. You know, so it's a little bit more tactical, a bit slower, because you're playing games, and that's where you need to be great, you know, in these international games. And it'll be the first same. That would be similar for the first team. You know, they'll come in, but the difference with the first team is you'll have players. Maybe say they meet up on a Sunday evening, right? Usually the international windows are start on a Sunday evening. You'll have players who played Saturday. You've had players who played Friday. You'll have players who played Sunday and join up late. You'll have players who play Sunday, join up Monday. So they're all physically in different places. Yeah. You know, so the first game is probably on the Friday. So first of all, it's about, if the players, you know, if somebody's played Friday, they can do something completely different on a Monday than somebody who's played Sunday. Yeah. You know, so they've got a real challenge in terms of the physical program until they catch up everybody, probably by about Wednesday. Yeah. And then they can work on the tactical work into the game on Friday. And then it's about, again, recovering, reflecting, moving forward, you know? Yeah. So it can be different because of the physical implications. And, you know, you've got, you know, Gareth Bale was playing in Spain. You've got Aaron Ramsey playing in Juventus. You know what I mean? You've got the 2 lads playing in Serbia. You've got players playing all across Europe. They've got to try and bring them back in. Okay, guys playing in America, you know, so all of that has to be taken into consideration when it comes to first team level. But where we don't have that with the kids, you know, with the younger age groups. Maybe the 21s a little bit, but not too much. So there's lots of different things you have to take into consideration with first team level, which you wouldn't have with the kids. Yeah, fair enough. Which makes it easier. So it can look different, but the principles of the training sessions won't change. Yeah, how they teach them. You know, we have technical meetings, and Rob Page, Ryan, they show us what they're doing with the first team. You know, we'd like you to do some similar things like this, you know. So recently we've had one just on throw-ins. Okay. So what the throw-ins the first team do, and how they manage throw-ins at the thirds. And next one is on set pieces. You know, next Monday we're doing defensive set pieces. So what they're looking to do in the Euros and the lead up to the Euros, and how we can maybe use them with the kids. Okay. Similar ones with the kids, you know, maybe not the same, but the same kind of principles for the set plays, you know. So yeah, we have a lot of collaboration, I suppose, in terms of what's taught.
So how often would that sort of conversation take place, where, you know, the first team or the under 21s are feeding back to you saying, you know, we'd like you to try this?
6-8 times a year. Okay. So usually between camps, so you between windows. So for instance, you know, if everybody's out in an international window in September, then there'll be something between September and the window in October. And then there's a window in October, there'll be something in between the one in November, then there'll be something after Christmas, you know. So there's always something going on, you know. So, and we use those to pick squads as well with the kids. Okay. So we have those conversations. So we may have a day just as technical staff. Half the day will be on technical football, half the day will be on players, where the talent ID team come in, the logistics team come in, and all sorts of going on, you know. So it's a big operation. But yeah, that's important, you know. If Ryan can't always be on it, he's on it more often than not. But if he's not, then Rob Page is on it. And if he's not, then Albert's on it, you know. Tony Roberts, goalkeeper coach, is next Monday doing the defensive set pieces with us. Okay. So there's lots of collaboration across the age groups. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Question from Andrew: to what extent during talent ID do you gather evidence on psychological and social attributes, and what are the main elements you are looking for in this corner?
Resilience. I think resilience and attitude, reaction to mistakes, reaction to when things don't go right. I think that's one of the key things in any footballer's life. Every player is going to have a setback at some point. Every single player. And that setback could be in a game, it could be a bad pass, a bad cross, that didn't defend properly, you know, lost a 1v1, you know, lost a header. They're going to have setbacks. I actually look at that more than I look at their technical ability. When I'm monitoring players, and the talent ID the talent ID team, as well as scouts, will be specifically looking for mental toughness and resilience, how they manage mistakes a lot of the time, and then within our camps then is how they manage getting beat, how they manage not being in the team, how they manage coming off, not playing the whole game, So we're always looking at that, and it's such a huge part of the game, because when you get to the top level, there's not a lot of difference in technical ability. There's not a lot of difference in game understanding. It becomes a lot closer, all the players.
Yeah.
It'll come down to whether they can deal with it. It'll come down to mental toughness and resilience. Yeah. So it's a huge part of what we look at. But we always, we're very conscious in camps. We always have individual meetings with players, loads of individual feedback with players. We always have 3 coaches in camp, so we take six players each, and we mentor those 6 players through the camp. From an individual perspective. I will usually, if any new players, I'll usually take and be in the lead, so that I can get to know them. You've got to try and get to know the players as best you can. So immediately when they come in, is everything okay? You're happy? What are your goals for this camp? What are you playing at your club at the moment? What are your IDPs at your club? All those kind of things. We have those conversations at the beginning of the camp, and then we can try and link learning a little bit for the clubs, and then we can also feedback. But it's an interesting question you've asked, because we ask all the clubs, what kind of feedback do you want from us, from camps? And they don't care about systems, technical, tactical. They want to know, was he a good lad? Did he toe the line? And what was his attitude like? They want to know that.
Yeah.
They're not that bothered about the tactical stuff. They want to know, did he integrate properly, and was he a good lad? So yeah. Important part of it, but mainly resilience for me. Mainly resilience and being able to bounce back and manage things properly. But we've got to be a part of that. We work heavily around challenge and support. So if the challenge is huge, the support has to be there. So if you're playing France away and you get beat 6-0, the challenge is very, very big. I'm not saying we've beaten 6-0. We haven't in France recently, but if you do, Switzerland, this was the best. Switzerland about 3 years ago, we got battered 6-0 out there, first game, under 15s. And we were playing Belgium the next day, and Belgium had already beaten Switzerland. So the boys had come off an absolute hammering against Switzerland, and we were battered. They were brilliant at that day, Switzerland. They were much better than us. But we had to do a lot of work then in terms of overnight, after the game, through the afternoon, the next day before the Belgium game. But it was really important then that the players took over. The players took a lot of ownership in the dressing room before the Belgium game and said, look, that's not happening to us again. You've had the feedback. Let's go make sure that changes. And we got narrowly beaten 2-1 by Belgium, but it was a much improved performance. Yeah. So the result's not the major one. It's it's the performance that was much, much better day 2. They quickly saw the level of competition. So we had to support that in terms of what they did well and what they needed to improve the next day,
Yeah.
So it's always a process with young players.
Brilliant answer. And with the clubs, you touched on it there. Like, what sort of collaboration is there during the season? Obviously, the clubs have the players most of the time. So what sort of communication lines do you guys have?
Well, we monitor all the time. So this is one of the areas I'd like to have more money. Where we could have a lot more people working for us out in monitoring players and having those relationships with the clubs. But we were limited in terms of what we can do, so we have to be quite strategic in terms of the games we go to, the clubs we go to, how often we go to certain clubs, and the players in terms of their, I suppose, the players we think have got the better chances of coming through. It is a bit cutthroat like that. But if you've got special players, especially Wales, because a lot of our players can play for England as well. So we've got loads of duels where we have to make sure that if we've got really good duels, we want to try and keep them. Do you mean like England will want to try and keep them? So we've got to try and make sure that that's good. But yeah, it depends really. We have to be strategic in terms of, so for instance, I'd rarely go to London to watch one player. I would make sure the game had 2 or 3 of our players in it, so I could monitor 2 or 3 at the same time. And then have some conversations with them after the game, and maybe go and meet the club, one of the clubs beforehand, have a chat about the players, and then the players always have to bring in their IDPs and things like that to us during camp, at the beginning of camp, so we can link that learning. We always feed back to the clubs in terms of the learning that they've had and the games we've had and things like that. So there's always feedback to the clubs. And also we spend time during the year going and meeting clusters of clubs, especially if they've got a few players. So I'll go to London maybe, and I'll go to Fulham, Chelsea and Wimbledon or something, somewhere close. We'll spend a couple of days, go and meet them, go and have a chat to the coaches, how the players doing, and we keep in contact like that, really. But it's a really important part of the process, but it's a difficult part of the process because we haven't got as much resources as I'd like in that area. So we have to do the best we can. And we're quite lucky that there's a load of people in England and in and around all the leagues in England who've done their coach education through Wales. And we got a lot of good Welsh people working in England. So for instance, my 17's goalkeeper is West Ham's 18's goalkeeper, He's a Welsh. So he can keep an eye on London for me, in terms of players maybe. So I'll say to him, look, you're playing Gillingham today or whatever. Keep an eye on Matty Baker for me, or whatever, something like that. So we have that kind of collaboration as well. So we've got to be quite clever at times, but it's difficult.
Yeah. All right. Question from Stefa. Well, actually, Julian says, thanks to your kids. That was great. So it's,
Sorry?
Julian just said, thank you to your kids, and just saying that was great for your presentation.
Yeah, making a noise up there.
Yeah. Okay. Question from Stefa. Regarding the players' development, would you focus on getting better at what the player is already good at? So improving the X factor areas, or would you focus on improving the areas that they're not so good at?
I think you've got to, it's a pretty obvious. You probably got to do a bit of both, but I'm big on improving the good parts of the game, so to make them excellent at those parts of the game, because they're probably the things that are actually going to get noticed as they go forward, then, I'm not sure Ryan Giggs would have been the player he was if somebody concentrated solely on his right foot, would they? He's, be unbelievable at going and attacking fullbacks, and getting crosses in and scoring goals, so be unbelievable at that. Yeah, you're gonna have to work a little bit on the stuff that they're not as good at, but I think, the weapons that they'll end up having if they're good players will be the things that probably get them through the door. So I think, Chris Popov, or I'm saying some names now, but we've got a player out there who's, he's left-footed and he can play, coming inside off the right on his left foot and whipping things across the goal, and scoring goals, just become unbelievable at that. That's how Gareth Bale, has made his career. I know he works hard and he's an unbelievable professional, but how many times have you seen Gareth Bale coming off the right and whip one fast stick with his left foot? I think he did it last week for Spurs, didn't he?
Yeah.
So become unbelievable at that, because that's what's probably going to get you through the door. If you can be unbelievable at something. So I would probably look more along that side than the other way.
Makes sense.
Have an eye on the other side,
Perfect. Okay. John's just asking about Global Coach. So he says, is that an application or one of the software the team uses? So yeah, if you could just tell us about that.
Yes. Piece of web-based software it is. You get it if you're on the A license or Pro license with Wales. You get that as part of the package.
Okay.
And we get it as a staff, but it's quite a nice, it's quite a nice application because it's animated. It takes a little while to actually build animations when you don't know what you're doing. Once you know what you're doing, it's really quick and you get used to it. It's really quick. I can build animations quite quickly now, but yeah, because you've got the animations and you can move the animations like tactic boards as well. It's quite a nice way to communicate,
And in the presentation,
you can communicate. You can buy it.
Okay, perfect.
Buy Global Coach. You can contact Global Coach and buy it.
Yeah, excellent. And then just going back to your presentations where you showed us that, I might have misheard you, but were you saying that you would show those types of clips to the players before sessions on the grass? That's
exactly what I show. What I showed then. What I showed you. I show evidence from the game. I may not show 3 clips. I just wanted to show you guys the modeling through. Really, I may show 1 clip, 2 clips. But then we'd show the session like that, exactly like I showed you. This is what we're looking for. And then we go and train it. So that's an important part of the process. I mean, we always what we call frame sessions. Yeah, it's an important part of the process because, some kids will understand the session just by looking at that. And they'll go, yeah, got it. I know how to do that. Some of them will be sleeping when that's on and they do it on the pitch, but I think you've got to try and cover the bases. But we can come back to it then, once you've got that, you've got a basis to go from and you can reflect on it then,
Yeah, perfect.
How do you think we did, that kind of stuff? And then we film the sessions, obviously, and then link it to that and did we do it right? You know, and as a coaching staff, we can reflect as well. Did it work? Would we do it differently next time?
Brilliant. Okay, makes sense. All right. Last couple of comments and questions. One from James. What are your biggest challenges with the club versus country scenario?
Wales versus England.
Yeah, I think he just means like, what is that? I think he just means like the work you do and the interests of the clubs, I'm guessing. Is that what you mean, James?
Yeah. Look, the biggest challenge is the lack of time we're able to spend, you know, communicating with the clubs. That's the biggest challenge, and we've got relationships with all the clubs. Don't get me wrong, and some of us, like I may have a better relationship with Man United than Matty Jones, who works with the 18s. He may have a better relationship with Leeds, you know. But we've got good relationships with clubs, you know, across the board. But you know, I'd like to be far tighter on that. That's a real challenge for us. And then the other challenge is the players coming out in international windows. Players, you know, every club knows 17s, 19s, 21s, you know, 18s. International windows are there for that. But up until then, the clubs haven't got to let them out. So 15s and 16s, there's no international windows for them. So we're relying on those relationships to actually get the players out to be a part of it. Now, we very rarely have problems, very, very rarely. But we've got to make sure that we're squeaky clean, you know. We've got to be spotless in terms of everything we provide, because we're bringing kids out of Man City, Man United, Tottenham, Chelsea, you know, these massive clubs who've got unbelievable facilities. They've got unbelievable support services. So we've got to be as good as, if not better, when they come to us, you know. And we've got to provide that service. So we've always got to try and raise those standards and stay there. So yeah, there's loads of challenges really. I was messing about with the England-Wales thing, you know. We have the odd issue. Some groups more than others. But, you know, generally they find their way. You know, we never stop anybody. We never say, look, we have loads of times where Welsh players who we've identified can play for England, and then they do really well, and England call them in. Yeah, fine, no problem. You know, Tyler Roberts went and spent some time with England, and Ethan did, and Ben Woodburn and people like this. But in the end, you know, they'll fall on whatever side they fall on. We want to keep the best players if we can, our best players, but we have to make sure that like the environment's excellent, you know, so that they don't want to go anywhere else.
Yeah. Just James following up with who sent in that question. He's just saying, I'm a Welsh coach living in London, so I get where you're coming from with the Wales versus England.
Who'd you work for?
James, let us know who you work for, mate. Okay. Just a comment. Northwood FC.
Northwood FC. Good man.
Okay. Comment from John. So he's got the level 2, and he's asking about the UEFA B in Wales and what are the criteria that the Welsh FA look for, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. A C certificate. You know what I mean? So you'll have to have the C. And apart from that, nothing, I don't think. Level 2 is C, isn't it, in England? Yeah, it is.
I think it's the same thing. So you could probably do it. You're actually quite lucky now. There used to be a 10% rule, didn't there? Used to be we could only take 10% outside the country. But I think that's been abolished, and it's more like 70% now. So you could apply. You know, I think you could apply for the Welsh B. We've got quite a lot of B licenses. You know, it depends where you live. We've got them in the North Wales, Mid Wales, South Wales. You know, we've got quite a lot of regional B licenses. So contact the FAW Trust.
Excellent. And with the A licenses held regionally as well, or are they more national?
The A license is 1 a year.
Okay.
No, there's only 1 A license in Wales per year, and they take up to about 40 candidates. But you need the B.
Yeah.
You need the B, and then the only thing with the A license is because there's less people, and I'll be brutally honest, you know, if somebody outside Wales is of a similar level of ability and experience as somebody inside Wales, they're probably going to go with the person inside Wales, you know. But if the person outside Wales is better and proves, you know, that they've got more experience, you know, they're further down the line in their coaching and they're ready for the A license, then they'll go with that one. Do you know what I mean? They don't discriminate really. So it's yeah, but you need the B.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. I think that's all the comments and questions. So guys, thank you for showing up, attending, watching and throwing in your questions, added to the experience. And Richard, really thankful for you to spend your evening with us. It went a little bit longer, I'm sure, than we both planned, but hope you enjoyed.
That's fine, don't worry about that. There's
Yeah.
somebody on there called Carwyn Edwards. It's got to be Welsh. It's got to be Welsh.
Yeah, with
Carwyn.
That's written.
I'm not sure about Giorgio Tuffarides though. That's not Welsh.
Don't think so. No. But yeah, I'll leave the final words with you, Rich.
No problem. Well, thanks for having me. Hopefully you got something out of it. And if you want to do coach education in Wales, just try and get in touch with the FW Trust and see if they can do anything for you.
Perfect.
Okay. Excellent. And good luck with your coaching. Enjoy it.
Nice one, Richard. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All the best, guys.